That's what I told those three teenagers 20 minutes after they shoved a 90-year-old Marine veteran into the street. 20 minutes after they laughed while he struggled to get up. 20 minutes before 30 Marines in full dress uniforms surrounded them at the bus stop. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Jake Morrison. I'm a staff sergeant in the United States Marine Corps. And what happened that Tuesday afternoon changed everything I thought I knew about justice. It started like any other day. I was walking back from the grocery store in downtown Portland, carrying 2 bags, thinking about dinner. The street was busy with the usual crowd, office workers heading home, students with backpacks, the familiar rhythm of a city life. That's when I saw him. An elderly man in a faded Marine Corps scalp, walking slowly with a cane. He couldn't have been more than 5 feet tall, maybe 120 pounds soaking wet. The kind of man you help across the street without thinking twice. 3 teenagers were walking behind him, tall, loud, making jokes I couldn't quite hear. The old Marine stopped at the crosswalk, waiting for the light to change, his hands shaking slightly as he gripped his cane. Then it happened. The biggest kid, had to be 6'2", maybe 200 pounds, walked up behind the veteran. No warning, no words, just shoved him hard between the shoulder blades. The old man stumbled forward into the street. His cane clattered across the asphalt. He went down hard on his knees. The 3 teenagers burst out laughing. "Look at Grandpa crawl!" one of them shouted. My grocery bags hit the sidewalk. I ran toward them, but the light had already changed. Cars were honking. The old Marine was trying to pull himself up, but his legs weren't working right. A taxi swerved around him, driver laying on the horn. By the time I helped him to the curb, the teenagers were gone. "You okay, sir?" I asked, helping him sit on a bench. He looked up at me with pale blue eyes, sharp as steel despite his age. "Been through worse, son." That's when I noticed the tattoo on his forearm. Faded but unmistakable. Semper Fi. Below it, a date. Iwo Jima, 1945. This man had stormed the beaches of Iwo Jima, had probably watched his friends die in the sand, had served his country when it mattered most, and 3 punks had shoved him into traffic for laughs. "What's your name, sir?" I asked. "Robert Chen," he said, adjusting his cap. "Corporal, retired, though I guess retired doesn't really count for Marines." "No, sir, it doesn't." I helped him to his feet. "You need medical attention?" "Just my pride, son." He tested his weight on the cane. "Just my pride." But I could see him wince. Could see the scrape on his palm where he'd hit the asphalt. Could see something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Fear. "Those boys," he said quietly. "They were waiting for me." "What do you mean?" "This is the 3rd time this month." His voice was barely a whisper. "Different kids each time. They think it's funny." My hands clenched into fists. "They wait by the bus stop," Robert continued. "No, I take the same route every day. No, I can't fight back." I looked down the street toward the bus stop, saw the 3 teenagers hanging around like they owned the place, laughing, probably bragging about what they'd just done. "Mr. Chen," I said, "would you mind if I walked you home?" "You don't have to do that, son." "I want to." During that 10-minute walk, Robert told me his story. Enlisted at 17, fought in the Pacific, lost his best friend on a beach in Japan, came home to work 40 years in a steel mill, buried his wife last spring. Now he lived alone in a studio apartment, had to take the bus to get groceries because he couldn't drive anymore. Tried to stay invisible because the world had gotten meaner since he was young. "Used to be," he said. "People respected their elders, respected the uniform. Some still do, sir. Not enough?" When we reached his building, I made him a promise. "This stops now." He looked at me with those steel blue eyes. "You can't fight every battle, son." "Maybe not, but I can fight this one." That night, I made some phone calls. The first was to my buddy Tommy Rodriguez. He'd served 2 tours in Afghanistan before coming back to Portland. Now he worked construction but stayed in the Marine Reserves. "Tommy, I need a favor." "Name it." I told him about Robert, about the teenagers, about what I'd witnessed. "Those little bastards," Tommy said. "What do you need? How many Marines can you round up by tomorrow afternoon? How many you want?" "All of them." The second call was to Lisa Park, a Marine I'd served with in Iraq. She was now a detective with Portland PD. Lisa, hypothetically speaking, if some teenagers were harassing an elderly veteran, what would the law say about that? Hypothetically, assault, elder abuse, possibly hate crime charges if they're targeting him specifically. And if someone wanted to make sure they understood the consequences, hypothetically, as long as no laws were broken, I might be too busy to notice a peaceful demonstration. The third call was to my cousin Danny Morrison. He worked at the local news station. Danny, you want a story that'll go viral? Always. Meet me at the corner of 5th and Morrison tomorrow at 3 p.m. Bring a camera. By noon the next day, I had 30 Marines ready to roll. Active duty, reserves, veterans from 3 different wars, all in dress blues, all pissed off about what had happened to Robert. We positioned ourselves around the bus stop, not threatening, just visible. At exactly 2:45 p.m., Robert appeared at the corner, right on schedule, walking slowly with his cane. At 2:50 p.m., the 3 teenagers showed up. They saw Robert and started grinning, started walking toward him with that same cocky swagger from the day before. That's when they noticed us. 30 Marines in full dress uniform, standing at attention, watching them. The biggest kid, the one who'd done the shoving, stopped dead in his tracks. "What the hell?" he muttered. I stepped forward, still in formation, still professional. "Gentlemen," I said loud enough for everyone to hear, "I believe you know Corporal Robert Chen." The teenagers looked around, suddenly aware that every person on the street was staring at them. Suddenly aware that Danny's camera was rolling. "We don't know what you're talking about," the second kid said. "Yesterday at 3:15 p.m., I continued, you pushed an elderly Marine veteran into moving traffic, a man who served his country at Iwo Jima while you were nothing but a gleam in your great-grandfather's eye." The crowd was growing, people pulling out phones, recording everything. "You think picking on old men makes you tough?" Tommy stepped forward. "You think it makes you big?" The third teenager, the youngest one, was looking pale. "We were just messing around." "Messing around?" Lisa Park appeared at my shoulder. Still off duty, but her badge was visible and assault and elder abuse. That's what we call messing around in the legal system. The biggest kid tried to bluster. "You can't prove anything." "Actually," Danny called out from behind his camera, "we've got yesterday's incident on 3 different security cameras, plus about 50 witnesses to today's intimidation." That's when Robert stepped forward. The crowd went quiet. 30 Marines stood straighter. Even the teenagers stopped fidgeting. "Boys," Robert said in a voice that carried despite its softness, "I'm 90 years old. I've got maybe 5 good years left if I'm lucky." He looked each of them in the eye. "I didn't fight in the Pacific so you could grow up in a country where might makes right. I didn't watch good men die so you could think cruelty was funny." The youngest kid was crying now. "But I also didn't fight so you couldn't have second chances." Robert turned to me. "Sergeant Morrison, these boys made a mistake. They're young, they're stupid, but they're not evil." He faced the teenagers again. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to apologize. Not to me. To every veteran whose service you disrespected yesterday. Then you're going to volunteer 20 hours a week at the VA hospital until you understand what service means." The biggest kid found his voice. "And if we don't?" 30 Marines took one step forward in perfect unison. "Then," Robert said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, "you'll find out why we're called the few and the proud." The apology lasted 10 minutes. The biggest kid broke down halfway through. The second kid couldn't stop saying he was sorry. The youngest one asked if he could shake Robert's hand. But that wasn't the end of the story. Over the next 6 months, those 3 teenagers kept their word. They volunteered at the VA hospital every week. They learned about sacrifice, about honor, about what it means to serve something bigger than yourself. The biggest kid, his name was Tyler, became Robert's unofficial grandson, helped him with groceries, drove him to doctor appointments, listened to war stories that no one else wanted to hear. The second kid, Alex, started a program at his high school. Students. Volunteering to help elderly veterans with yard work and home repairs. The youngest, Michael, joined the Marine Corps the day after his 18th birthday. And Robert? He started walking taller, started smiling more, Started believing again that maybe the world hadn't forgotten what respect meant. 6 months later, I got a call from Tommy. "Jake, you need to get down to the VA hospital." "What's wrong?" "Just get here." I found Robert in the cardiac unit. Tubes and wires everywhere, Tyler holding his hand, Alex and Michael standing guard like sentries. "Hey, Sergeant," Robert whispered when he saw me. "Guess my old ticker finally decided to retire." "Don't talk like that, sir." "It's okay, son." His grip was weak but steady. "I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "For reminding me why I served. For showing me that honor isn't dead. For proving that Marines take care of their own." He squeezed my hand. "For giving an old warrior one last good fight." Robert passed away that night, surrounded by Marines, surrounded by the 3 kids who'd learned to love him, surrounded by the family he'd created in his final months. His funeral drew over 300 people. Marines from 5 different decades, veterans from every branch of service, teenagers who'd never met him but had heard his story. Tyler gave the eulogy. Standing tall in a borrowed suit, voice steady despite the tears. Corporal Robert Chen taught me that strength isn't about how hard you can hit. It's about how much you can take and keep moving forward. It's about standing up for people who can't stand up for themselves. He looked out at the crowd. He taught me that respect isn't given. It's earned. And once you earn it, you have to keep earning it every single day. The honor guard folded the flag with precision that would have made Robert proud. Handed it to Tyler because Robert had no other family. Because sometimes family isn't about blood. Sometimes it's about choice. After the service, I found myself thinking about that Tuesday afternoon. About split-second decisions. About how one moment of courage can change everything. Those 3 teenagers could have walked away, could have ignored the consequences, could have chosen to stay the same, but they didn't. Robert could have accepted his fate, could have stayed silent, could have let fear win, but he didn't. And I could have minded my own business, could have pretended I didn't see, could have told myself it wasn't my problem. But I didn't, because that's what Marines do. We stand up, we speak out, we protect those who can't protect themselves. We remember that freedom isn't free, that respect must be earned, that honor is a choice we make every single day. 3 years later, Tyler graduated from college with a degree in social work. He specializes in helping elderly veterans. He keeps Robert's Marine Corps cap on his desk as a reminder. Alex runs a nonprofit that connects high school students with veteran mentors. They've helped over 500 elderly vets in the Portland area. The program is expanding to 12 other cities. Michael made it through Marine Boot Camp with the highest honor graduate award. He carries a photo of Robert in his helmet. Says it reminds him why he serves. And me? I still walk that same route to the grocery store. Still keep my eyes open for people who need help. Still believe that one person can make a difference. Because I learned something that Tuesday afternoon. Something Robert taught me without saying a word. Heroes aren't born. They're made. Made in moments when ordinary people choose to do extraordinary things. Made when someone decides that what's right matters more than what's easy. Made when Marines remember that our oath doesn't end when we take off the uniform. So here's my question for you. When you see injustice, what do? When you witness cruelty, do you speak up? When someone needs help, do you step forward? Or do you walk away and tell yourself it's not your problem? Because somewhere out there, there's another Robert, another elderly veteran who served his country and deserves better than mockery. Another person who needs someone to stand up for them. And maybe, just maybe, that someone is you. The choice is yours. The moment is now. The question is simple. What kind of person do you want to be? If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because Robert's story doesn't end here. It continues every time someone chooses courage over comfort. Every time someone stands up instead of standing by. Every time someone remembers that we're all in this together. Semper Fi, Corporal Chen. Your watch has ended, but your legacy lives on. And for everyone else, your watch has just begun. What are you going to do with it?